All right, thank you so much, Helena. If it's okay with all the participants and also the organizer, I would like to be sharing my screen to share a little bit about my experience in managing this Bridging the Gap program, particularly to cultivate experiential learning to the law student in times of pandemic. So this project, I would call it a pilot project, because it involves a combination as well as a collaboration between Taylor's Law School as well as a law firm which is based in Malaysia as well. So this project came about because it happened in times of pandemic. There was limited opportunities or positions available for students to embark on internship opportunities on their own initiative, because there was a tight competition among those who wants to do pupillage at a law firm and also those who are required as a compulsory module to undergo internship. So what happens to those students who are confined in their homes in times of lockdown, where they have no interactions either with lawyers, mentors, or in-person interaction with the academics as well. So this discussion appeared in the newspaper. So that's where myself, together with a couple of lawyers, we reach out and try to discuss how we can expose students to the real life of how lawyers work in a law firm, but in a remote environment. So it may sound impossible back then. We received quite a lot of questions whether or not this is effective or feasible. So that's why we started with the pilot project. So it's not an internship, it's just a platform to provide students with an experiential learning where they can apply their academic studies into the real working environment. So this project has received positive feedback because academicians as well as industry experts in other disciplines realize they can also utilize this method to train students either in times of panic or in post-pandemic areas as well. When we talk about experiential learning, a lot of individuals will think that it's a hands-on approach, but based on literature, it's go beyond than just a hands-on approach where you need to be present in a physical environment. It reflects these 5 elements where it will encourage students to experience the areas or the discipline that they are learning. So this is where the hands-on application comes in, but it also requires students to reflect on the process as well as to apply the knowledge that they have learned into that particular area, albeit in the virtual environment. And lastly, so we try to integrate transdisciplinary area as well, where students not only limited to provide a legal discipline or legal knowledge, but they can also ask students to try to collaborate with students from other disciplines as well. So based on the literature as well as research, so that's why we embark on this structured virtual learning experience. It's different from internship because as internship position, students are required to be present in a law firm from Monday to Friday, 9 o'clock until 6 p.m. Whereas virtual experiential learning, we only require students to be present on Zoom on Wednesday until 7 p.m. So it's only a couple of hours, but students will have this enriching experience to interact with the lawyer. So we have managed to receive 9 practicing lawyers to spend their Wednesday evenings with the selected students and to train and guide the students how to apply the knowledge that they have gained in law school into the real world of work. So it is only 4 hours a week. So a lot of people keep asking, would 4 hours a week be sufficient? Why do you want to integrate this pilot project as opposed to internship? Back then, this was last year in 2021. It's very, very difficult for students to acquire internship position. And also lawyers are struggling to manage remote hearing, virtual hearing, and on top of that, for them to volunteer out of their time, it is also already a courtesy on their part to be part of this pilot project. So initially, we intended to have a hybrid format where they can, on certain days, come to the law firm, experience meeting with all the practicing lawyers. They'll be able to shadow the lawyers to go to court. But because of the increase in number of COVID-19 cases, when Malaysia embarked on the third round of lockdown, so that's where we had to convert this experience into a fully virtual format. So the participants involve 4 coordinators. So there'll be one myself representing Taylor's Law School, and we have 3 practicing lawyers representing the law firm. So they will assist in finding lawyers who want to volunteer their time every Wednesday for 4 hours. So there'll be 2 cohort of students, because in Malaysia we have 2 semesters. We have one in March semester, as well as the second semester begins in August. So that's why we have 2 cohort. Because this is a pilot project, so we can only select 5 students from my module to be part of this initiative. So the number of lawyers that volunteered to be part of this project, there were 9 mentors. So depending on each cohort, so there'll be 5 mentors and 5 mentees throughout an 8-week period. So the learning areas is very structured in a way that every week a student will know what exactly they will embark, what exactly that they will learn, as well as lawyers. They are also guided in terms of the personalized learning that they're going to impart to that particular students during that particular week. So hence, we have received positive feedback from a number of law firms who want to be part of this project, because they realize that this experience is much more enriching and meaningful due to the structuredness of the program, as opposed to the internship program where you just shadow the lawyers and then you work on daily instructions. So this is also a good opportunity for organizations to explore this type of method as a contribution to the society, and also to train students before they actually enter into the real work environment. So in order to assess the effectiveness of this project, because we are mindful it's short period of time, whether or not students can truly enhance their legal research, their critical thinking skills, their persuasive writing skills, their communication, as well as advocacy skills. So we conducted an interview session with all of the 10 mentees, as well as with all of the 9 mentors, just to get feedback on the areas that we can improve in terms of the running of the program. And when we provide requests for feedback from the students, personally, as an academic, I would like to ask what makes this experience different from learning from lecturers as opposed to learning from lawyers. Should it be the same thing? Because ultimately you applying whatever that you have learned into the real work environment, although in a remote environment. So students have shared at law school, they only learn the theoretical part. They know that they need to apply what they have learned into the exam question, but they don't feel the sense of urgency. They don't feel the sense of practicalness unless the direction comes directly from the practicing lawyer. So this is the common feedback that we have received from all the mentees. And they realize when it comes to studying in classroom, it's very easy for them to remember and then regurgitate information back in the answer booklet. Especially when it's an open book exam, there are a plethora of resources in the external platform. Whereas in the real work, the case study are based on real life. So it's much more complicated and in-depth as compared to the assessment question that we provide to the students. That's where the student realize the importance of having critical thinking and the ability to solve problems, because it's no longer remembering what they have learned in a textbook and then applying it as simple as that. So we also asked whether or not they're satisfied with their experience with this virtual experiential learning, bearing in mind that the students are still confined to their homes with no in-person interaction with the lawyers. So students actually enjoyed the fact that it is structured, they know exactly what area that they should dedicate in particular week, so they will able to focus their attention to sharpen that particular area, like legal research, academic writing. So when lawyers agreed to be part of this session from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. in the evening every Wednesday, they don't necessarily be in the Zoom session for 4 hours. So what will happen is that the lawyers will give instruction from 3 until 3:30 for half an hour, and students are given the time on their own to complete the task before 7 p.m. So I've also asked the students, how do you manage studying, doing your assignment, as well as being part of this pilot project? So students shared that they do really need to learn on how to manage their time effectively, but they enjoy being in this environment where they feel that they're under pressure, because otherwise they feel a sense of loneliness just focusing on studying without having all these external interaction or external assignment. So students realize that the structure of this program is effective, but they do miss the opportunity of actually seeing a client in person, seeing the interaction in court, in person as well. But they are able to experience all of this via Zoom, because in Malaysia, we do conduct remote hearing as well as remote client interview sessions. So at least they have a little bit of experience in that sense. So I've also asked students whether they believe the short period of time, the 8 weeks, is sufficient for them to enhance the skills. So we also received positive feedback in a sense that students realize of all the modules that they have learned throughout the 2-year period, because they are the second year student, they realize that in real life, when you have a problem, it's not solely focusing on one module, but it integrates multiple modules at the same time. So that's when they realize the complexity of real life, real legal issues. So it makes them appreciate having this kind of dilemma and try to recall back all the lessons that they have learned in year 1 as well as in year 2 to resolve that real life case study presented before them. Students also shared at home, they don't believe that they can sharpen their skills despite lectures provide with them with formative assessment. So they do appreciate this kind of opportunities. And students also provided feedback. Despite that lectures provide a consultation session on a particular day, particular time for them to consult any question, they don't take that initiative. So they do appreciate that lawyers, despite their busy schedule, are able to spend a few hours out of time to provide advice and personalized guidance to the students. So when we look at the skills specifically, we want to see if the students themselves can identify exactly the skills that they have gained. Students shared, despite myself as an academic who taught them legal skills on how to conduct legal research, they don't actually practice the skills taught during that particular subject. So what they do is that because of the easiness of access on the internet, so they tend to copy and paste information without utilizing the online databases. So when the instruction comes directly from the practicing lawyers, from their future employers, that's when they appreciate the reason or the need to actually utilize online databases and extract peer-reviewed or scholarly articles and not simply extracting information from Wikipedia or other external sources. So students also experience that by interacting with lawyers, they feel much more confident. Lawyers will train them on how to communicate effectively, how to appear to be more confident in terms of advocacy. So that's when I realized that students really appreciate the personalized interaction between themselves and the mentors, because they feel that they are receiving that personalized and invaluable interaction with the lawyers. We also interviewed all mentors just to get feedback on their experience being part of this pilot project. Mentors also shared a positive feedback with some rooms of improvement. So they believe that they shouldn't be spending one session with the students on how to teach law students on conducting research. To them, it's a basic skill. But of course, they also appreciate the effort that law school have already trained students on how to conduct proper research skills. And they're also mindful that students being students, sometimes the knowledge that we impart to them, they don't actually apply it properly. So these are the areas that the lawyers ask us to whether or not we should continue having a specific week on conducting legal research, or we can replace it with certain areas which are much more practical. Lawyers also observe their mentees' performance from week 1, because when we try to select the students, we try to make it diverse and inclusive. So it's not only limited to students who excel in their studies. So it can be students from various backgrounds, various skills. So we do have students who are very reserved, timid, rarely speaks in class, being part of this project. So by having that interaction with the lawyers throughout that 8 weeks, so the lawyers realize that there is growth and performance in the particular mentee's characteristic. So students appreciate that because the lawyers who are participating in this pilot project, they are a third-year lawyers, so they are consider themselves young lawyers, so they can still recall the areas that they lack in law school. So whatever that they believe the existing law student should improve, so this is where they will keep imparting their information, tips, and skills to the law students. They wish they can share more knowledge to more students as opposed to 5 students per cohort, but they're also mindful of their time and our resources. So that's why moving forward, we're going to introduce a specific module, which is called the litigation experience, where students will need to work in a law firm for 2 hours a week. So that law firm will be their classroom, where they receive personalized learning experience directly from the lawyers as opposed to the academic. So the conclusion is, when we look at the effectiveness of the structured legal experience, it is effective, but only to a certain extent. We can't say that students have substantially improved, because we are mindful that students have so much more to improve given that they are only experienced this pilot project for 8 weeks. But the way when the mentors ask them question on week 1, as opposed during the advocacy showdown, the way that students reflect their ability to critically think under the spot, answer questions posed by the lawyers during a short period of time. So lawyers believe they still can enhance their skills further, and they are much more happy to get these students on board to work with them as a lawyer in the future. So the result of the interview session shows that it is effective. So we do encourage more academics to try to collaborate with the industry, try to get students involved, not only in academic studies, but in real world project as well. Okay, that's all my presentation today. So I hope the areas and my results finding of my research project will also be beneficial to all the participants who are here today.
Thank you so much. I think we all learned a lot, and I'm really excited to see what you've done and what you've also accomplished with all the feedback that you've gathered, not only from the students, but also from those mentors. I think that's really interesting. So there's 2 questions that came in the chat, and I think we have time for them. So the first question is, I was wondering if mentors used any learning analytics to help identify the students' needs. Could you explain a bit?
So when we look at the students' needs, it's not necessarily using a system, artificial intelligence or data analytics, because in order for them to receive the student, it will be through the coordinator like myself as the lecturer, because I'll be seeing the students from week 1 until week 4. So on week 4, that's where based on my observation and their performance in the classroom, I'll select 5 students. So on week 5, the following week, that's where they will be part of that pilot project. So it's all based on the observation for the time being.
Oh, amazing. That's good to know. So the other question that came in was, I know that the skills required of law students are quite specific. Are there any soft skills in this approach that can be promoted, and how are they applicable to other disciplines?
So it depends, because there are so many types of soft skills. So I believe that the lecturers will need to reflect on their module learning outcome to see which areas that they want their students to cultivate or to improve. So using that areas or the gap that you feel is lacking either in that particular student or in the industry, so that's where you structured that experience or your own project, you can call it, to focus on that particular soft skill. Because in Malaysia, back in December 2020, there was an issue where the pupils are requesting for an increase in their allowance, whereas lawyers try to argue, should we increase your allowance if you're lacking in certain types of skills? So if we're training you, so why should we be providing you with additional allowances? So that's where we spoke to a number of lawyers to see which soft skills, which areas that you want the students to improve. So we put it in the lesson plan. So that's why we target that specific area.